right, welcome everyone. So I know that we have a little bit of overlap going on with Kidney Stream, and so we're going to take our time to get started tonight. Probably do a turbo tourney build for the new gold floor diamond ceiling. Do that real quick, just like 4 or 5 minutes while we're waiting on everyone to show up. And but today we are going to be covering tourneys and era settings. Huge source of confusion. It was funny, we were sharing stories this week while we were talking about topics, and I don't know how many times I've built a setting and I had like a full rotation of 5 pitchers in a cap for like a 1927 tournament, and so we all make these mistakes. And so our hope is that by sharing a little bit of knowledge of what we've learned, we can help you minimize your mistakes. So Aster, I know this. Aster's actually going to be running the show today. I'm just going to be the monkey clicking a button, and this is his expertise. And so X will be bringing the stats as usual, and I'll pull up the tail end of the stream and talk about win conditions a bit. So, but Aster, while I pull up PT, do you want to give us a quick intro for this topic?
Sure. So, the main thing that you need to understand with regard to uh, tourneys that have era settings is that most tournaments, all of your, ace of quicks, and the vast majority of tournaments are played with the same baseline as league play, and that's 2010 is the settings that OOTP uses for both league play and the vast majority of tournaments. So when we refer to an era-based setting, it means that they're picking a year other than 2010 to try and mimic what baseball was like in that era. And if you think back to prior eras of baseball, there were a lot of things that were done very differently. For example, teams were much smaller back then. They didn't have 25, 26 players on roster. And so guys played multiple roles. Starters pitched every other day, every 3 days. Bullpen roles were very different. So that OTP has tried to make that a little bit more close to what that era of baseball was like when they adjust the baseline to those years. The other thing is when they adjust the baseline, it changes run environment of how teams score and how many runs those teams do score. So you also have to make adjustments for that as well. So we're going to go through today a few of the different baselines that have been used in OOTP in the past and that are available in current tournaments, and then discuss how what kind of adjustments we tend to make based on those particular era baselines.
Yeah. And reader, absolutely. We're actually going to touch on that today. How OOTP does change league totals, which if that phrase means nothing to you, it will by the end of today. OOTP will change league totals and player behavior, but they do not change roster requirements. And so, we could probably brainstorm a little bit, but I think that's probably the most significant variable that does not change based on error settings. Very true. So as you can see over here, I didn't even intend this, but as you can see, this tournament is played with strategy and stat settings that resemble the year 1986. The DH rule is being used. The Series R best of 7. This is all really critical information right here, so that I didn't even know this tournament was 1986, by the way, and so I'm glad we're doing this. So this is all information you want to consider when you're thinking about roster construction. And so, all right, chat, real quick. If you joined us in the previous weeks, what is our recommendation for the first thing to do when you're building a cap roster? Anyone remember? It's a good rule of thumb, no matter what the tournament is, error settings or anything. Does anybody remember the first thing you should want to try and do? Yes, the shell, absolutely. So I like flipping my overall upside down, and we're gonna bounce over. I've never built a gold floor shell, and so so we're gonna bounce over to starters real quick, and I've never done a low gold shell. If anyone else has, feel free to fire some ideas out. Double duty could be fun.
Question before I had
Yeah.
a question before we start. When you were looking at the tournament settings,
Yes.
can you talk about the differences between like a best of five versus a best of seven,
Yeah.
and what
Absolutely.
considerations you do with that? Because I know there's lots of tournaments that we have now that are best of fives, and be curious what you and
Yeah.
Aster both think about the differences
Yeah,
in
and this
roster
is
construction.
totally this is not a coordinated conversation, by the way, everyone. I'll toss what how I approach best of five, best of seven, and then Astor, I'd love to hear your thoughts. So best of five, I will actually invest more in pitching than I will in a best of seven. You will often see my rosters where I make the largest punt on SP5, and so for example in my diamond cap rosters. I will often have a low silver, high bronze player. There was a period in PT22 where I was consistently in the top four in diamond cap weekly diamond cap, and I was completely punting SP5 with like a mid iron. And so I in a best of seven, I will typically punt more in SP5 than I will in a best of five. And the reason being that every starter's value goes up in a best of five because every game carries more weight. And so I approach best of five, best of seven a little bit differently. Additionally, in best of five, you even if you sweep, you'll often what it's you're going to face more game four, game five scenarios. And so typically in a best of five format, you have less opportunities to rest. And so I do take that into consideration for my bench in general and for my bullpen in general. That's how I've always kind of thought through it. Aster?
I usually notice that it's actually best of five when I'm up 3-2 and it says the series is over, and I think I need to actually. I thought I would need to win another game, so I generally go with the base. When I do think about it, I often will be like, "Oh, this is best of five. I should think about this differently," and I end up with basically the same roster design as I would otherwise. I don't. I agree that there's adjustments, but I don't punt my fifth starter nearly as often in best of seven as Durden does. So in best of five, I find that usually if you do need that fifth starter, he's pitching the pivotal game five most of the time, and so I definitely want to have a solid option there. I'll sometimes even put somebody that I feel is a little bit maybe of a safer bet in that game five spot, and maybe put more of a wild card guy a little bit earlier in the rotation
Yeah.
because I'm like, okay, game five, I want somebody that's going to keep me in the game, and especially with this version of offensive environment in PT23, I want somebody who's going to keep me in the game, and then just hope my offense does what they usually do and score some runs for me.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. So I don't micro near as much as I used to. I don't know if I micro to tournament all of PT23, honestly. But the flex starter, you kind of it's difficult to utilize this strategy beyond like round one because when you start getting into in a best of five format, when you start getting into 5 game series after 5 game series, but what Aster's bringing up about having a wild card pitcher and like if you're up 2-0, then toss him in game three. See if you can get a lucky clinch. But if not, you still have two strong arms going game four and game five. I'm all for that strategy. If you're going to be around a micro, I think it's a little bit safer to take some risk in high leverage investments, like your rotation in a best of 5 format. So, um, cool. Reader asking about running the 6-man rotation in spores. Um, I think you can do that. I have seen people doing that. Obviously, you want your SP6 to be someone you can transition to the bullpen. But again, it does require you to be around for that tournament. I think Spores fires pretty late. I go to bed early. I think Spores fires pretty late. So I still rely on traditional 5-man rotations in Spores. But sure, if you're going to be around to transition your SP6 um, to your bullpen, I mean, I think it's a fine strategy. I think that's the intention of it. But, the PT community suffers from copycat syndrome. So people probably see the 6-man rotation and like think it's like something you're going to run the whole tournament. But my guess would be those people are transitioning SP6 to the pen after the round robin format.
Yeah, I make sure when I'm building out for a tournament like Spores that I have some one or two guys in my pen that do have somewhat starter stamina. But I usually just leave them in the pen, and then if I happen to be
Agreed.
around when the round robin is ending, and I see that I've clinched, I'm moving on regardless, then I'll throw that guy in, even if he's not at 100%, and just let him be the starter and rest some of my starters.
Yeah.
But it's really just I don't think it's a big deal. I think if you're not near the computer, I don't think you're giving up that much likelihood of success. It is frustrating that you don't start that next round with your ace, but I it's really just one of the small luxuries that if you can micro, but I don't think it's a huge deal.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what I do typically is before I go to bed, I'll take a look at my schedule in Spores or formats like that. I'll take a look at my schedule and I'll take a look at their lineups and I'll try and get righties throwing against righty heavy lineups and lefties throwing against lefty heavy lineups. Which usually involves me moving my quote unquote ace around. But I mean, if oftentimes I'll set my ace is SP2 anyways. I know he won't throw twice in round robin, but I hate round robin anyways. I know he won't throw twice, but if I'm gonna, make it out around robin, then I'd rather my ace go up game one. The other thing to watch out for is I've seen people make this mistake a lot. They will have clinched. They'll have like 4 wins in the round robin going into game 6, and you would be stunned, or maybe you wouldn't be stunned. How many times I've seen this happen where someone will move like one of their iron pin arms or a low value arm into the starter role for game 6, and they will move a starter over to the pin. They won't go to the 6-man rotation. They just swap a starter out, and then that low value arm gets murdered and gets chased in like round 2, and then they have a starter whose rest is off, and so it throws the rotation into chaos. And it also burns through all their pin arms. That is one risk in moving a low leverage arm into that game 6 if you've already clinched, is that you can burn your pin up. So it's just something to think about. There's a million variables for all these different scenarios. Well, cool. Let's do this real quick. We're not going to take a ton of time, guys. But by the way, chat, you're welcome to throw out ideas for names too. So we'll throw double duty. Look at this. Has anyone ever noticed that before? Eddie Plank and double duty have like the same profile. I do know one's righty and one's lefty, but who else should I be grabbing, Gus?
Let's see.
Frank Miller wrote The Dark Knight, didn't he? I mean, we got to throw him in there. I think Corbin's fun for the pin. Louis Brissy. Oh, I have non-live only. I'll turn it to all types. Didn't add a ton, but
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of. By the time you get up to the 80 level, I don't think there's a lot of gold live starters that will play, but occasionally, the Verlander before he got a bump today was kind of vaguely playable.
Yeah, that was a fun card. That was actually a good live card, like a fun one. I like Dave Brown's balance. Oh, here we go. Ashby, that's spice. Gary Peters is pretty spicy. We're starting to get up in cost though. Let me go to all pitchers. I didn't even. Guys, I failed. I didn't calc our cap number. I don't even know how many.
It's 11.6.
Ooh, that's actually tight. Holy crap. 11.6 is pretty darn tight.
This is just a full diamond, right? This isn't low diamond?
I believe it's full diamond.
Yeah,
so.
full diamond. All right, so got that. Catcher. I mean, I feel like we should get Sean Murphy for our E6 brethren.
The other guy I like at an 80 if you have is Darren Fletcher.
I do not have him yet. Platinum Darren Fletcher?
Yes.
Do not have him, but I do have Johnny Kling. I know he cost a couple points. Farrell's pretty good too. I'll throw both them in there. First base. What do we got here? Ooh, Uke! Finally get to play Ukeless. Yes! Abso-freaking-lutely. Dude, Jorgensen's actually a beast of a card for people that aren't familiar with a lot of the gold cards. But first base, left field, he's got a spicy V-right profile for 80 points.
Well, since we're never going to do an Unsung Heroes tournament stream, we should talk about Mike Jorgensen now because that will be his one claim to fame, is he's the best hitter in Unsung Heroes.
Oh, there you go. Guys, there's a little tip for you. It looks like his price is already going up. Looks like people saw that. But yeah, he's not in any missions in 74.66. People are buying him for the unsung format. I did grab Morrill, by the way, everyone. I don't see anyone else here I want. Morrill does cover first, second, and third, but Danny Richardson, this card's great. Frankie Frisch. I was actually running Frankie at second base until I picked up Heine Groh. And so Frankie Frisch is actually awesome. I love this card.
The other one for third base is Eddie Matthews, is an 82.
Yeah, rub it in my face. I don't have Eddie Matthews.
Oh,
Colton?
sorry.
Colton Wong? He's an 82.
Sean Figgins is a beast of a card too. Got lots of coverage here. Who'd you say? Sorry, Exto?
Colton Wong.
Oh yeah, Colton Wong is a defensive monster.
He's a snapshot 82.
Oh yeah, there he is. Colton Wong is great. He's actually probably the best defensive second baseman.
That range and turn double play is really good.
Yeah, Danny Richardson, pretty close. I'm gonna toss Danny Richardson covers short. Yeah, we need second short coverage. That's great. Because we got Uke, first, third, Danny Richardson, second short, and we got John Morrill. So I'm going to toss Figgins in there too because he's great. All right, let's hop over to short. We do have a couple over here, right? Gene Alley. I like who we got already. Marcus Simeon isn't bad at all. 93 range is pretty good. I'm going to grab him too. Jack Wilson has no eye, so by default I don't play him. But Jack Wilson's a great card for this format. I'm just pointing out a couple to everyone. The two Tulos, like the PL Tulo, is one of the amazing V left bat, and he came back up short. He might be worth grabbing just in case we're budgeting our DH. All right. I know, Mike. Dude, not having a sandbox is awful. Okay, Randy Wynn is just awesome. Spotswood Poles. Look at this, guys. He's free in this format. Um, we might be relying on him for center field.
Andy Pafko.
Yeah, Pafko.
Army Knight.
Oh my gosh, Pafko is just hanging around the gold meta. He will not die. Who else did you say, Exto?
No, just it was just Pafko.
Okay. Oh, dude, this is Rocky's time to shine.
Oh, Rocky, yeah.
Yeah, 2
Great
points and just an absolute beast of a card. I'm sure all the Rockies have been pulled now, haven't they? I'd be surprised if they hadn't. I know there's not a ton of pack ripping this year compared to the past, but I think we got our outfield, right? We got all the key arms. I mean, the key position players. Let's just skim right
Between
forward.
Pafko, Poles, and Colavito.
Yeah,
That's 3 like backup outfielders.
Yeah, and Randy Wynn covers with great defense. He covers the entire outfield. Let's see. Oh, Randy Wynn went up. Is he on a mission now? He used to be so cheap. Oh, they don't list the mission here anymore? Oh, they don't. That's interesting, guys. Have y'all noticed that? They don't list the mission?
No, they only don't show it when you're in a tournament. If you look in your league, if you go into regular league, it will show the missions, but in tournaments it doesn't.
Oh, man, that's bunk. All right, so we've only spent 17 points building our shell, right? 2080 is the base. So we have a great shell here, guys. We have great starters. I think 1 or 2 relievers, like true relievers. Yeah, 3 true relievers. Oh, look, I did grab a live card. Huh.
And we have 3 spots left.
So we have a good shell here. So, guys, if we're looking at this, this is how I think through the building process. Oh, kidneys, you're good, man. I totally get it. You are all good, my friend. So we were given time for the stream to kind of get up and get firing. So if you're joining us from kidneys, this works perfect because we're almost done with this. And so we're walking through our concepts from last week. This is the first time I've ever built the daily gold floor diamond ceiling cap. So it's a 1986 era, so we do get to talk about historical era a little bit. It's a floor cap, and so gold floor, diamond cap. And so we're walking through our concepts, which is build a shell of a roster first. So we have our shell here. Build the shell of the roster, and then start looking for high leverage and high value adds. So is what we're doing right now. All right, so yeah, no, Peach, we got to protect the PT servers. Got to protect them. And so Exto and Aster or chat, what do you guys see in here for when we're considering the diamond cards, our biggest value adds from this shell right here? First thing that pops out at me is the outfield. I mean, Colavito is a monster and Poles is good, but I think getting a little pop in the outfield could be good. What were you going to say, Aster?
I was going to say, I do it a little differently. I think from here, okay, I've got my shell. Who are the absolute best options at the ceiling level?
Yeah.
And, how can I fit them in? Now, sometimes I'll look and I'll realize, the ceiling guys and the floor guys kind of share the same positions and I've got a little bit of a problem. But generally speaking, I want to, at this point, think really like who are my best ceiling guys. And so for this format, the new 99 Edgar,
yes.
The 99 Babe Ruth,
Judge.
Yeah. So I grabbed Edgar. I'll grab Babe. Who'd you say, Exto?
Judge.
Judge
there.
So, Judge is great. Judge is great. I guess I've guys, I'll be the first to admit I develop unhealthy love with certain cards. I just love my little Jim Wynn. Love him. Let's grab Judge. Where'd Judge go? There he is.
He's right at the top.
Yeah, let's make sure. Wynn. I'm gonna grab him. All right, so grab some outfielders.
Who are the
I would
top
just
batters?
we've got enough outfielders, but just for purpose of the conversation, Ellis Burks has to be in the conversation.
Yeah, he's great.
Especially, it does depend a little bit on, the era environment, and we haven't really got into that yet. But he's a guy that I feel like has got to be part of the conversation in any sort of diamond build.
Yeah.
He's just he punches way above his weight for a 98.
So I just know my collection, and so I know it's not going to jump out to anyone else, but I did grab Zisk, and man, that guy has a monstrous hitting profile for a 91 cost. So I'm just going to toss him in. And plus, I just want to play him. So I'm going to toss him in. I'm trying to think. I mean, obviously, Giles is always a great value add, but I know we're kind of building for the heroes and zeros since we covered that last week. I do have Julio Franco, who can be really useful in a cap, since he can cover first, second, and short. See, shortstop is just a position I'm down on in PT23 in general. Just not a big fan of it. I do have Terry Turner, who has a great profile for any cap tournament. Anything you guys want to grab in shortstop?
I would probably, if we're going on the cheaper side, I would go Hamner. You have a Hamner, right?
Yeah, have Hamner.
I would either go Hamner or Turner, depending on if you want to save those few points. That's, if you, I think those are probably the two best, in this range. There's nobody, I don't like the 99 Ripken.
I don't either. I like the gold Ripken more than I like the 99. So, I do not have Simba 92, Mohelian. Let's see. All right, so third.
Third, I'd probably go Hara if you have him.
I do have Hera. Love Hera. I think we're good there. Hera's the first and last option. All right, second base. I love the Joe Morgan card, 97 Joe. Like, oh my gosh, I know the community was kind of hating on him Thursday night, but I freaking love that card. I'm not a fan of Ross. We do have Julio. We have 97 Joe.
Huggins, if you want to save 2 points.
Which one did you say?
Miller Huggins.
Yeah, I do have Huggins. I did pull the PL Avia. I got Pfeffer and Sternweiss. So we have a lot of options here. I do like Miller. He kind of falls apart in league once you get to Diamond, but he's a great card. But then it's like, if we're going to take Miller, kind of, if we want a slapper, do we save the points and go Heine? I know it's apples and oranges, but I don't know.
Just as a conceptual, Durden, I'm just going to interrupt you for a second.
Yeah.
Just as a conceptual thing, one of the things I like to do is I don't dwell too much at this stage. I just kind of pick a guy that I feel comfortable with, but then I keep in mind, I'll sometimes even jot down on a piece of paper next to me, next to my computer, like, hey, if you need the points, I'm going with Miller Huggins, but if I need, 8 points, I can drop down to Heine Grow and not take too big of a downgrade in talent. So I think that's an important way as you're kind of going through this process is pick the guy that you feel most comfortable, but maybe mark down a couple of options if you want to go a little bit more or a little less, and then kind of keep track of how many points that would buy you. Because if you get to the end and you've put together a roster and you're 40 points over the cap and you got to start cutting down, that's a good way to do it, is if you've got some kind of ready-made options to kind of drop off without making huge drops in value.
Yeah, so a great point. Sounds like a lot of effort to actually use pen and paper, though, Aster. Like, God bless. No, I'm just kidding. So I grabbed Buck because left-handed hitting is a premium in PT23. I grabbed Buck. Jimmy Fox is just still one of the best hitters in all of PT23. Grabbed him. Rusty Staub's always. I don't like splitty guys in caps, but and I dropped down and grabbed Greenberg. So we have a lot of options there. When we go to catcher's another mess. I don't have the best catcher collection. I'm actually a fan of Gabriel Marino. He is a future legend. He just has a great balanced hitting profile. You definitely punt on the defense. So I don't usually invest in catcher much. I'll grab Mike Stanley just because he rocks. But we're just going to move on. All right, so now we take a look. Oh, we never grabbed pitching. Crap. All right, let's hop over to pitching, and like I said, we'll speed run this. All right, Aster, Exto, start throwing some pitching out that you see on my screen. Mark Pryor is the god of PT23.
87 Kevin Brown. I like that 94 for Bill Marbury card.
Yes, I like Bill Foster too, by the way. I'm a huge Foster fan.
Yeah. For High Diamond, Preacher Row, 98. If we want to have if we want to spend on another anchor guy besides Pryor.
Yeah, I got Preacher Row. All right, let's play with that. Let's see what we get. Oh, guys, we have to play him. I'm sorry. We absolutely have to play. I got him. Where is he? I got the news. He just dropped the other day. Gosh, Jabba. Where is he?
He's a starter.
Oh wait, he's a
listed
starter?
as a starter. He's listed as
He's
a starter,
with
which
like
makes
20-some spam.
What the heck? No wonder.
So you get the stuff bump. Yeah.
Oh my God, he gets a. You're right.
It's broken.
That's so broken. Where is Jabba? Where'd he go? There he is. He's at 86. My brain cannot fathom him not being at least at 89. All right, so let's start throwing some stuff out. Let's throw out Jeff Gray. Grab Jabba. There's not a lot of rhyme and reason to this, guys. We're just beating it. Who we tossing? Kendall Graveman. He's getting tossed. I want to keep our 80s in there. So Gary Peter gets the axe. Dave Brown.
Yeah, Dave Brown.
Yeah, Dave Brown.
Brissy is a starter.
Mark Pryor, Preacher Row. Let's see if we can fit in two big boys. Who else did you say? Sorry.
Brissy?
Yeah, let's pull Brissy. We'll throw in Kevin Brown. Let's change Jabba to closer so he's not confusing us. All right, we've got 4, 8, 10. Let me get rid of some of these guys down here. I'm going to yank Pafko. We're probably going to end up keeping all these. Let me pull these 3. All right, so we need 2 more. Man, I like Furpo. I think we grab him.
Toss him in.
Yeah, so that gives us Kevin Brown, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, and we may use a budget arm. And does that give us 12? Gives us 11. We'll throw in Bill Foster. We'll see if it fits points-wise. Oh, we're already pretty deep. All right, we're not going to invest in catching for now. We're going to rely on Johnny Kling. We've got 79 points to play with, which is about 4 max guys. Looking at who we grabbed, I think we punt on second for now. Sound good to you guys?
Yeah, you figure most people are going to be running Brown. They're going to be running Pryor. So getting something like Buck Leonard in may be good for the VR.
I like it. Let's get Buck Leonard in. We're punting on second. I'm cool with currently punting on shortstop. Well, let's throw in Granny Hamner. He's cheap. Third base. Toby Hara was our plan.
Yeah. You want to do Grow at second? That uses basically one max spot for Grow, Hara, and Hamner. Is a pretty good. That's a pretty solid infield with Leonard.
I like it. And so we currently have Colavito. I feel like we can upgrade him. Feels so strange to say that. That is such a monster of a card. But I'm selfish and just want to play Zisk. Alright. So we need a little bit of outfield coverage. So we could actually run Jim Wynn. Oh, wait, we didn't get Har in. Wait. Alright, so where are we off? Oh, I got Moral in still, but Moral's better than Uke. Alright, can we fit Jim Wynn? Or Ellis Burks? Do we play for fun or do we play for the win?
Your team, your call.
Alright, Jim Wynn. Gosh, we still have 34 points left. Wow. We're going all in on the fun package thing, guys. We still have 16 points. Holy crap. This is so generous. Alright, so we got
maybe another starter?
Yeah, we got Preacher Rowe, Mark Pryor, Furpo Marbury, Kevin Brown, Bill Foster.
I'd maybe take out Foster and go for like another 98, 99 starter.
Hutchinson.
Yeah, I got Hutchinson. We want to go Hutchinson or Dickey?
I don't like Dickey.
I don't either. Okay. I'm
the
a sucker
numbers
for
say he's not
Sid.
that bad, but I like Hutchinson better.
Oh gosh, what are we doing? We got our favorite pitcher. So silly of us. Nolan Ryan, the cap god.
Of course.
Okay, and then I'm giving 9 points to the community, just out of generosity. All right, so just to get this over with, guys. Yes, Nolan is the cap god. I'm gonna let the roster build the AI build everything for me. Let's see what we ended up with. Zisk, Ben Works. Yeah, looks like a good roster. AI did well.
It's a winning roster.
It's a winning roster.
No guarantees.
All right, community. So we're about to roll over to era settings and tournaments, and this is a fun presentation for us tonight. We got some good stats we're going to show you. Astra's going to lead the way. We're just kind of having fun today. Lots of good information here, though. So we do hope we dispel some misconceptions or even some myths that are kind of hanging around the main Discord server. And so, Astra, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. One thing, Durden, for some reason, my version of your video is freezing, so I'm not going to see the slides.
You're good. I'll guide you. Don't worry about it.
Okay,
right.
So I just wanted to cue you up on that.
You're good. You're good. I'll hit the first slide real quick for you, Astor, then turn it over to the stuff that I know you more directly prepped. And so, guys, just a quick reminder, context is key. Know your cap number, like we were joking around with a moment ago in our build. Know your cap number. Know your cap environment, which is what we're covering today. And then these two things, the cap number, which we covered previously, the cap environment we're covering today, these are the primary drivers for your decision making. So like when you're looking, the conversation we just had about 1986 is going to be dramatically different than the conversation we would have about 1927, right? If that was the year setting. So just remember those two things. Know your cap number and know your environment. And so, Astor, now we're on what are era tournaments?
Okay. So we touched on this a little bit at the beginning, but I'll go over it again. Most tournaments and league play are pegged to a historical baseline, and they use 2010 as the settings for that baseline. And when they pick a tournament and make it a historical baseline, they're changing it to some year other than 2010. For this version of PT, we've had 1871, 1927. We have a new tournament that's 1955, 1993. They have a variety of years, and basically what they're trying to mimic is that the game of baseball has changed over time in two distinct ways. One is kind of the basic nuts and bolts of how players are used has changed a lot. You think, back in the day, there were, a lot of teams had two starters and they would throw 400 or 500 innings each. And bullpen was, just a couple of guys that, were there for mop up duty. They really didn't aggressively use bullpens. A lot of times rosters were much smaller as a result of that, or because they were smaller, guys played multiple roles. But also over time, the offensive environment of the game of baseball has changed. What components go into scoring runs, whether it's bunt, hit and run, stolen base versus walks, homers. That the mix of how teams score their runs and how many runs they score has changed a lot over time for a variety of reasons. And so what OOTP has tried to do with the historical baselines is mimic that. Now, in a previous version of the game, they've done I would say, a fairly poor job of doing that. It almost, to a certain extent, was flipped backwards, that as you farther went back in time, the game looked like a crazier version of the current game rather than the game that they were trying to mimic. But this year has actually done a much better job. I think most especially when you look at home run rates, as you go back in time, home run rate really drops off a cliff when you get back to around the time period in Major League Baseball where we truly had like a dead ball era. So when you're setting, your lineups for these tournaments, you have to look at, one, what were the roles of players back then, and kind of fitting the guys you putting into the roster into those roles rather than the standard, 5-man rotation, 7 or 8-man bullpen. You're going to be able to make some adjustments to kind of fit, how that environment works. And then also, when you're picking what players to actually use, you're going to take into consideration, okay, this era, promotes home runs and minimizes strikeouts. So certain types of players are going to fit better. So we're going to talk about both of those things tonight.
Yeah. So one thing I do want to. A lot of people, when they play Perfect Team, they kind of forget about the base game. And so I have it later in the deck, but I'll go ahead and show you guys. We actually have, in the base game, if you're in commissioner mode in a league, you can actually go into the league totals and modify the environment for like a fictional league that you're running, or change a future MLB season, the run environment. So we always talk about run environments on the stream. Such run environments are driven by league totals. And so if you take a 30-team fictional league in the base game and you select, so these are the league totals for 2010, and you simulate a season, the engine is going to try to end up with around this many at-bats, this many hits, doubles, triples, home runs, etc. And so the engine does, I actually think it does a better job for error settings than it has in the past, like Astor was talking about. And so a tournament is trying to trend, I'll just use the word trend. Someone smarter than me probably has a better term, but a tournament will try and trend towards these league totals in a truncated format in a tournament environment. And so an era setting for a tournament of 2010, which you probably saw when I was flying through, is these are just some guiding numbers that Exto grabbed, is going to try and trend towards these rates when when I'm saying trying to trend towards the totals, obviously the tournament's never going to have a 162 game season, so it's kind of using these rates as baselines by which how to behave, if that makes sense. So you can see these are the 2010 league totals, and so if I change the base game to 1952, these are the league totals. And so just look at home runs, like Asher was talking about a moment ago. In 1952, there was 1,701 home runs. Obviously, different amount of teams in the league and everything else. That's why we have the modifiers over here. That's why we have these modifiers. But when we look at 2010, you can see it's a completely different environment. You know, you had 4,613 home runs. More teams, and of course. But you can see that these modifiers are different. You have almost the double the home run modifier. So when we talk about run environment, we're talking about league totals that are guiding the behavior of the Sims. So, Aster Exo, did I explain that okay? Did y'all want to add or touch on anything I said?
Yeah, you can
explain it about as well as anybody has explained it to me.
Yeah, there's a good post on the, I forget which forums. I don't know if it was on the main OOTP forums. Like, it's complicated. Is the short answer.
Mm-hmm.
You can think of the modifiers as how the ratings play to try to achieve the league totals.
Yeah.
And I think what happened was last year, when you had the whatever 1,700 and whatnot home runs, but the modifiers were off, then it had like guys with like 5 power hitting like 10 home runs a tournament, and then guys with like 100 power hitting like 25 home runs a tournament. So like, I think what they did for this year that made a lot of the error settings more accurate feeling is that they kind of retuned the modifiers as well as whatever they did to rework the engine.
Yeah.
But ask me on Discord, and I can dig up the link to the one thread where they talk about how the modifiers kind of affect how the league totals are achieved, and really if the ratings, if the card pool doesn't sustain those modifiers, then you actually get kind of bumped up performances. So this is going back to, you know, what Mike ABC's been talking about, and the rest of the people. If everyone's running low control people, then it doesn't matter what control is, type of thing. You're like, everyone's going to walk about the same, and this is also where caps kind of work better than regular best of 7 quicks or other opens for the tiers, is that by having a wide range of ratings, then you actually get a more, I would say, realistic feel for how cards perform. But again, with a kind of a meta look and what have you, if everyone has high stuff, if everyone has low control, if everyone has medium movement, then you really get more RNG, I would say, because the stat distribution gets kind of more randomly distributed, where if you had, you know, some low control, some middle control, some high control guys, then the stats for that tournament on average should get distributed again, like where the high control guys get less walks and the low control guys get more walks, and you do see that with the data as when you start collecting it on a larger scale.
Well said. Okay, so I know this is why you guys came here. Okay, yeah, we touched that. So if you want to, let me move this a little bit for you. I'll run through these real quick, but if you guys want to screenshot this, there we go. I'll just make me super small. If you guys want to screenshot this, feel free to. It's just some good guidelines to go by. And again, we always recommend open up your tournaments and watch behavior, right? If you have time, go back and dig into your tournaments that have finished, and just try and watch how the winning rosters, how they're constructed, right? And look at how cards behave. Try and understand them. But this is why you're here, right? And so this is one of the reasons. And so what you need to remember is that after it's 7, right? You have to have 7 pitchers on your roster no matter what, correct? I think, and Aster is having a little internet issue today too. And so I want to say it's 7. I think we have this in the present. Yeah. You have to have 7 pitchers on your roster no matter what. And so in the early years, there are, I want to say in that tournament right now that's like 1870 or something like that. Yes, kidneys, that's correct. You can 2A a guy for them to count. Good point. And so in the early years, what's the tournament right now, guys? The 1871 or something like that. You can have 1 starting pitcher for that tournament. And so there is a transition in the early years era, by the way, which is up here. You can find a handy little screenshot in your base game also. Base game's awesome. When you get time, it's worth digging into. And so in the early years, you need 1 starting pitcher. I put 2 up there because there are some tournaments where you'll have 1 starting pitcher, but fatigue can stack. And so it's just safest to have 2. You can minimally invest in the second and just have them set as an emergency starting pitcher. But you can, I know in the early years, get away with 1 starting pitcher. You're always going to have 7 pitchers on your roster, though, guys. It's just something to be aware of. You cannot submit your roster unless you have 7 pitchers. The dead ball era, which is 1901 to 1920, I'll put 2 to 3 because fatigue can stack in tournaments. That monthly, I still have nightmares over that monthly we had in PT22 where everybody thought we could have 2. And we were running like 2A players, and then all of a sudden you'd make it to like the semifinals of the tournament, and you'd have 2 pitchers who were at like 40% fatigue and 1 or 2 2A guys who were at like 40% fatigue. It was awful. Is the era for Bonds and Iron tournaments based on 2010? That's correct. It is, my mice. So in Rebirth, things do stable out. You can reliably run 3 starting pitchers. And they will throw until their arms fall off. We're talking like 176 pitch counts, and they're good to go for their next start. I have seen snippets of conversation here and there from people in Rebirth type tournaments where they've had a deep run and their pitcher should be up. It's the 3rd time, it's 3 days rest, and he's at like 86%. So I have not mapped it. I don't know if anyone else has. I have not mapped it. I don't, like, there might be something to fatigue stacking in Rebirth too if you have a pitcher consistently throwing 165 pitches. But in Rebirth, traditionally, you can run 3 starting pitchers and you're good to go. All of these, the early years, the dead ball, the Rebirth, pin usage is rare. When you get into Rebirth, you will see pitchers come out at like 8.1 or 8.2 if they're at like 145 pitches, 150 pitches. It does happen sometimes. So it's just something you need to be aware of. You might want to throw 47 Eddie Plank in there, right? Or throw a 57 Jesse Tannehill in there. In the off chance that you do need a pin arm to get you 1 or 2 outs. That is a consideration you should start thinking about once you get into the Rebirth era. The golden years is 46 to 60. Again, you have 3 starting pitchers, high pitch counts. Pin usage does start going up in the golden years. Again, most of the time your starters will throw a complete game. It's not unheard of, though, that they get chased in the 7th or 8th inning. So the golden years, you do want to consider having at least 1 quality arm. So my mice, we will get back there. If you want to screenshot it, keep that in mind. We'll get back there. I actually jumped ahead in the deck and then jump back. Defensive era, boom. I skipped boom, 1961. We do jump from 3 starting pitchers to 5. Pitch counts of 160 are still a thing up here. I would say probably 145 to 160 is still a thing in the boom era. But again, pin usage does continue to trend up. The defensive era, you do start seeing pitch counts of 120, 145, but fatigue can begin stacking for your pitchers as they get up and repeatedly throwing 145 pitches. So you will need something of a pin now. You do want to start thinking about it. You can still get away with 5 arms, 6 arms, but you do want to start thinking about your pin and defensive era. The power years, we're kind of in the modern era now. Pitch counts, fatigue are relatively modern. You do need a pin, and of course, in the modern era, we live in the age of baseball where there are pitch counts, and guys are throwing 95 to 100, pitches. Very rarely you'll see people throw 120. But if you have max hooks in the modern setting, you will see starters who will throw 120 pitches, 125 pitches, 120 pitches, and their 4th time up, they're at like 92%. And so it is something to be aware of, especially if you're like me and you just don't micro anymore. It is something to be aware of, that in the modern settings, if you have max hooks on your starting pitching to protect your bullpen for tournament runs, it is very possible that if you do make it into that 4th, 5th round of the tournament and you have max hooks and your pitchers are throwing big PCs, that you're going to get fatigue stacked. So anything to add there, Exto or Aster, if you're back?
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Oh, excellent. Okay. Sorry about that. No, I think I think you covered that really well. One of the things to just keep in mind, a lot of this that Dern just went over is based on what the tournaments were like in 22, and I think for the most part, all of this carries over to 23. The only thing that I would caution is because the run environment, the amount of runs scored, is just so much higher. You do see a lot more pitchers that are just old-fashioned, just blown out of the game. It's like they haven't thrown that many pitches, but they let up 7 runs in 2 innings, and they get pulled. No matter what your hook settings are, just the AI, pulls a pitcher that's getting beaten up that badly. So the bullpens will get used more heavily just because that will happen every couple games, even if you have good pitchers.
Yeah.
So you do need to keep that in mind. Now, the good thing about that is that it usually won't tear through your bullpen like it will in a quick tournament, because the bullpen guys will also regenerate faster even if they pitch a couple innings. But it is more important to keep in mind that having some guys that can throw a little bit, that you're not terrified if they come into a game, because even though your starter let up 2 runs in 7 innings, your opponent's starter might let up 7 runs in 4 innings, and you're right back in the game. So then you don't want truly awful pitchers coming in and making it a 16-7 game. So you do need to think about a bullpen a little bit more than last year, even in these older era settings, because you would like to have somebody come in those situations and at least be able to maybe keep you in the game. And for example, in the GDR cap that we don't have anymore, that was 1927 settings, I still would try and get like Eddie Plank or a couple of like high mid irons in there, just because for those kind of situations, I want to have somebody vaguely competent to come in and pitch a few innings.
Just today in the Daily Gold historical cap, I think in the series I got bounced on, about 3 of the games my pitchers only went 4 innings because they gave up 8 runs, and it was painful, and I did not invest in my bullpen, and those games were painful.
Man, we have some great iron arms this year. I know we don't have a Clary, but we do have some good iron arms this year. and or Cornejo, right? But man, 47 Eddie Plank is freaking great for just 7 points. We have a lot of those guys. Gary Lucas. We got a couple of little gifts in the live card updates today, so we may do a little something with some of the live card updates and some cap building later. Not today, but later stream. And so good stuff here, guys. Just if you didn't get a screenshot or you're just listening in, just DM me. I can shoot this over to you. So yes, you do have to have 7 pitchers on your roster. So for those of you that haven't done this before, I did grab a screenshot for you. If you click rotation size, the least you can select until the tournament fires. The least you can select pre-tournament firing is a 4-man rotation. Once the tournament fires, there are other options. You can go all the way to a 1-man rotation. But before the tournament fires, just pick 3-man rotation. And then you can still, even though it says 4-man rotation, you can pick 3 starters and still submit your roster ahead of time. And so in this case, I would pick 4-man rotation, cut Tex and Red Ames, and just submit my rotation with 3 men, and it'll take. So I see a lot of people in main Discord try and build a cap for the first time. It's historical settings, and they're frustrated. Just change it to 4-man rotation, pick your 3 starters, and submit your roster, and you're good to go. So, all right. So, era settings. Real quick, no noticeable impact on fatigue for position players. Lou Gehrig will always be the exception. No noticeable impact on fatigue for position players, but less pitchers does mean you could get more creative with your position players. And so we're not going to go super in depth with this, but I will tell you, it is a good idea when you're picking those low iron cards to look for people that can be a pinch runner. We had a great chat the other day in E6 about, do you just platoon Bob Bailey and Willie Jones or Kruk if you're lucky enough to have him, instead of going all the way up. This was the pre-Edgar days, but before investing all the way in like an Edgar, right? Like a high diamond, perfect. And so, however, like now we have some great iron cards. You can consider platooning very cheaply, right? Like an Elmer Smith, that 48 that dropped in Rookie Sensations, I can't remember his name, but there's a lot of great iron cards you can look at platooning now if you want to save some points in a cap. So defensive replacements as well. I know we don't have a lot of big defensive guys in the low irons, but they might be an upgrade. So it's just something to think about. Since you need less pitching, you can invest more in some of these value spots. X, though, I'm going to turn it over to you for the stats. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
All right, cool. All right, so talk us through this pile of numbers right here.
So this is actually the I believe it to be the observed stats in real life.
Cool.
So this is I don't have a source for it. I think this was just a screenshot that I found somewhere. But you can generally see as you kind of go from 2010, starting in the top left, the runs per game. They've peaked in 2010, and then as you go down 2000, 1990, 1980, more runs were being scored. Other things to kind of to take a look at. More with I guess in terms of what we'd be if we wanted to kind of equate these ratings to the ratings that appear on the cards. Like you have let's start with pitchers, I guess. You have strikeouts per 9, so you can see that less people struck out as time went down. So this is all the way in the far right column, the strikeouts per 9. Less people got walked. There were a lot less home runs. So you can see that in the 1880s, the true dead ball era, that there's 1.1 home runs per 9, and nowadays we get around 1 home run per 9. So what I tried to do is I've been running a bunch of the different dailies, weeklies, and perfect drafts of the different formats, and tried to collect a bunch of data to try to mimic this and put it in graph form.
Yeah.
So if you want to go to the next
Yeah,
slide.
for sure. And so, thank you, Mike. FP Santangelo, that was that cap card we were thinking about. And by the way, real quick, X, though, like, I do love this screenshot. And so, there's a lot of history here within the numbers. Like, I can't remember exactly when they raised the mound. I think it was like 40 or 50, right? Ah, crap. But, like, I would guess it was somewhere in there because you see this huge drop in runs per game, right? And so, I could be off on that. I'm sorry, guys. I can't remember off the top of my head. But when you look at this, you think about rates, right? Like, and so these are rates that kind of guide the behavior of the engine, or theoretically does, right? And so, good to think about is you think about the terminant error settings. And so, oh, by the way, my mice, you wanted to grab a screenshot? Here's a screenshot of those 2010 league totals for you, real quick, by the way. So I'll give you like 2 or 3 seconds to grab that if you wanted to. You can also DM me for it, my mice, if you miss it. So these are the 2010 league totals that are driving the rates that you're seeing here, right? So 2010 league totals. I just grabbed the 1952 just for fun. But here we go. Exto. So here is fun with sample sizes. Some observed stats.
Yep. So I took 2010 from the weekly stats. There's the 1999 OOTP error. There's the 1993 perfect draft. There's a 1981 weekly. I can't remember off the top of my head. There's the Heinsohn 1977 weekly. There's a 1968 perfect draft, and there's the 1927 I think historical gold. So the one I have the least data on was actually the 1968 perfect draft.
Yeah.
So if you see odd bumps at 1968, so these axes are the x-axis is the year and the y-axis is the rate.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember, and I'm a goofball and didn't grab your chart like a dummy. Sorry, guys, it was July 4th. But I remember your plate appearances for the 1961 it wasn't a ton of plate appearances. I think it was like 20,000 or something like that. And just so you guys know, we usually pull like 1 million plate appearances before we start kind of thinking of things as normalized. And so we're having fun with small sample sizes. But some of it does hold up, like the Caper 9. We totally see that across formats. So
yeah, I have the 2022, or I guess I should go to the previous season on Baseball Reference. So a major league season has 180,000 plate appearances and 42,000 innings pitched. And these samples are, I guess the 2010 weekly I have 74,000, so that's about a season and a half. The 1999 is 67,000. The 93 perfect draft is 38,000. The 1981 weekly is 67,000. 1977 is 58. The 1968 perfect draft is 14,000. So not a lot of.
Yeah.
And the 1927 is around 40,000. So we're at about what most of those data points are where it's close. I would say.
Yeah.
You can see like the going back to the previous with the actual data from the major leagues. You know, there weren't a lot of strikeouts per 9 back in the 20s. There's less strikeouts per 9 than there are in now 2010, and the graph that the perfect team stats actually show kind of similar. Like we go from to just a little less than 3 to all the way up to about 8.
Yeah.
Ks per 9.
And then the one that you pulled, that these are 2 guys that really intrigue me. EXO is the extra base hits per 600 and the errors per 200.
Yeah. So apparently back in 1927, because no one hit home runs, all those shots went to the gap. And so you can sort of see there's more doubles, more triples per 600 plate appearances. The other thing that we've seen, if you've paid attention to some of the historical stuff, is that dead ball, there's lots of errors.
Yeah.
So I don't know if in the original chart they had that in where is it? Let me pick that up. No, there's no errors per se in that
Yeah.
the stats, but we can just see that as as you go further back in time, I guess infield error and outfield error matter more?
Yeah.
Question mark. And the fact that a lot of people typically play sort of the same cards regardless of the error, or it's just right now we have the pool of cards that are available kind of give or force you to make a lot of sort of decisions on do I play a lesser bat to um, to have a better fielding, or do I eat the 3 errors per 200 innings and just hope that
Those errors aren't consequential.
yes. um,
Yeah. That's pretty funny. Well, one thing, X, though, I can't remember, but we are seeing BABIP. There is a BABIP increase in the past eras, especially in dead ball era. So you are seeing more walks, and you are seeing more balls fall into the gaps, correct?
yeah, BAPUP was kind of hard. I was trying to look at BAPUP as a way to model defense, especially as you go back in time. With the idea that you know balls in play would uh, defense would matter more to reduce the batting average for balls in
Mm.
play. And I think what I saw is that the BAPIP that I had from the weekly open is around 312, but the BAPIP in 1927 was 306, and
Interesting.
it seemed like there was a bit of a decline over time as you go back, and then there was a bit of the anomaly in 1968, probably due to the small sample size and maybe perfect draft isn't the best tournament to pull data from, just because half the time people don't do a draft. So you when you face a lot of gym unknowns, I feel like some of these
Yeah.
totals get a little muddied. But in general, like it seems like batting average for balls in play, like it's not like a huge swing. Like you don't go from like 250 to 320, but it does seem that batting average for balls in play do decay over time
Interesting.
as you go further back in time.
Cool. The so the only one I remember from the rates, we can go check real quick, is just triples actually increased, but doubles actually increased as you move forward in time. Other than that weird 1930 blip, and I'm talking about real baseball. But triples were significantly greater back in the dead ball era. So yeah, fun
I,
stuff to play around with.
I just want to speculate that I figure people got better defensively,
Mm,
so like they could track down the balls, and maybe not so much sabermetrics, but like maybe people got slower. But
yeah, Statcast for life. The
I
so
think
oh, go ahead, Aster.
I was just going to say, if you look at like around 1900, a lot of it is just John McGraw. Is he figured out? He was the guy, the first manager to really figure out like where to position your hitters based on the profile of the guy who was at bat. So he literally micromanaged everything from the dugout, from what pitches were thrown, where his guys stood, and that was something that just wasn't done from what I've read prior to his managing style. And then everybody just started copying him because he was so successful.
Yeah. That's an idea for a stream, guys. We should do a 30-hour stream marathon as we watch Ken Burns baseball. It'd be a fun fundraiser. The who's going to go crazy and log off first? That'll be the. So guys, as we kind of wrap it up, I just want to offer a couple of tips on winning error-based tournaments. And so, what I personally always try and do is always try and like think of a question I'm trying to answer first. And so, I will randomly like poor Exto and Aster. I'll like start dropping all kinds of DMs on them at like 5 a.m. as I'm like thinking about, wait, this doesn't make sense. Like, if God, what did I ask y'all the other day? I was asking about late inning situations and like singles and extra base hits and outfield shifts and all this stuff. And so, like, I try and think about PT in questions that I'm seeking to answer, and I try and answer the most critical questions first, right? And so, if there's a significant decrease in K per 9, by the way, if you guys haven't paid attention to dead ball and even rebirth, significant decrease in K per 9. But there is an increase in hits per plate appearance in the older errors, right? And so, like, if you're thinking about that in conjunction with the significant decrease in home runs, like, what kind of hitting profiles do you want to target, right? Do you actually look at Chicken Wolf instead of Gabby Kravitz, right? Even though Gabby Kravitz is one of the best cards in the game, especially when you talk about punching above your weight. But you actually think about running Chicken Wolf instead, right? And so, so you always want to be seeking to answer questions. And so punting on defense at your own peril, right? So as you're building a roster, do you say, like, I am going to focus on defense, right? Contact and base running gets more critical in the old eras. Like, and so always know what questions you're trying to attempt before you begin to choose players, which I'm going to show you guys a really quick trick. And so, but before I move on, I just want, like, we always think about defense and PT as range. But there is something to think about here in terms of range versus error, infield error, outfield error. And so I grabbed JJ Hardy and Granny Hemner here, right? And so even hitting, like, Granny's got a pretty decent profile for dead ball, right? He's a slap hitter. And so, and he's got significantly better range than JJ Hardy. However, infield error is like, holy cow. It's oh wait, Exo, you're dropping some data here.
I just put that data in the chat.
Dude is beautiful. Yeah, so Granny Hemner has 10 errors per 200 innings of fielding's innings played. He makes 10 errors for JJ Hardy's 3. And so, like, 7 errors is not insignificant, right? Per 200 innings played. And so, yeah, I just want to grab this so you guys could think about it a little bit, that, like, range is not necessarily king in PT23 like it was in PT22, and we got to break that paradigm that we're all stuck in, right? We still trend towards people in range. And so we just want to think about breaking that mental model, especially when you start thinking about historical errors in PT. And so, like, again, 10 errors to 3, right, and 200 innings played in the field. So these are the questions you want to think about as you're trying to solve some of these puzzles that are PT. So I did want to show you guys something real quick. So I'm going to open up that. Oh, well, I accidentally clicked on Special Edition Low Diamond. But I just want to show you guys real quick. I think filters get better and better and better every year. The client itself gets better, guys. We shouldn't bag on them all the time, but, like, it's getting really good. And so I'm starting to play around with filters more. And so, and you can save your filters. Oh, Peach, really, man? It's me and you, really?
So going back to the chances, so Hamner has about 16 more or 18 more chances than Hardy does in 200 fielding innings.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, X. I'm over here, like, really frustrated that I got to face Peach in round 1. So guys, I did a quick filter before we queued this up, and I ran a filter for, I just want to show you guys real quick. So you can go into customize and you can just start, I mean, you can pick all kinds of stuff, right? So if you go down here to choose, I mean, these are all things you can filter player cards for. And you can combine your filters. And so I went in and I made a shortstop demo filter. I don't even know if anyone's going to show up on this because it's special edition. So, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to change this real quick. I'm going to cut off hide ineligible. That'll help a lot. And so I'm like, you know what? So in this shortstop demo, here we go. So these are my filters. So I did infield range has to be at least 80. And you can choose and or. And infield error is at least 80. And I did another and. So I'm constantly filtering down. And I said contact has to be at least 80. And so I'm looking for someone with some decent range. They have a high error value or strong error value. And I want someone that's going to put the bat on the ball because I know that's important in dead ball era. And so when I run that filter, the only players that pop up, it's only a few, is Pop Lloyd, who's just, of course, a monster. Great air, great range. And Nolan Arenado, the SE Nolan, who's a very strong card that I think we kind of forget about at times. Ray Dandridge shows up, who's great. He doesn't have much training at shortstop, though. And Brooks Robinson, the diamond card, shows up. As you can see, man, if that guy had some shortstop. But PT21, right? But look here, Charlie Holliker, packable card. And great card for historical play. He's actually great in just gold in general, by the way, guys, if you ever play gold quicks. But Charlie Holliker, for 2,330, this card's phenomenal for dead ball era and some of those older eras. So, as you can see, he's not going to hit the ball out of the park, but not a lot of people are. He's not going to strike out, so he's going to get the ball in play. He's got great BABIP at 72, 76. He's not going to walk a ton, but everybody gets a walk boost anyway. and he's great in the field. So, just, man, when you're sitting here and you're like, oh, God, what cards am I going to play? Filters rock. All right. That's it for me, guys. Exto, Aster, anything you want to add?
We could probably do a full stream on, what filters you should set up, what you can actually, I found this out earlier this year, but you can set up custom views so that when you actually go into a card, it'll show you more than just the standard batting stats 1 type of stats. Like, you can dump everything on. So I play on a big monitor, so I have like basically every stat that you can think of on the player page. But yeah,
Nice.
stats and filters are views and filters are important to get a better understanding of the game.
And I just got the hook from my 8-year-old too, guys. The so it's been fun, and I know we started late. We wanted to give Kidneys and them some time to work through their bronze stream, which was great. I tried to catch as much of it as I could. But yeah, thanks guys for coming out again. Shoot us a DM. And some ideas we're putting around for next week's stream is doing some PD draft theory and maybe 1 or 2 drafts. But if you have a topic you want us to cover, just shoot us a DM. We really appreciate it. So, Aster, I know you were kind of in and out today. Anything you want to add before we sign off?
Just wanted to apologize for the technical difficulties. I will be having a long call with my ISP tomorrow. Hopefully, won't be a problem going forward. But still, I'm glad we covered all this stuff. I think it's really helpful. I see people ask the same question over and over with regard to historical tournaments about how many starting pitchers and how many total pitchers you need. So I think it's good that we laid all of it out and gave people a resource to kind of go back to kind of familiarize with themselves with all this stuff. Yeah.
And yes, I'm capturing VODs now. So this will be available if you want to go back and watch again. And we appreciate it, guys. Thanks a bunch for coming out. See you,
Have a good
everyone.
night. Happy 4th, everybody.
Yeah, happy 4th, everyone.